If Iran acts against the United States, it will be bombed to hell. That is the warning from President Donald Trump. Key components of Iran's nuclear program have been moved to a fortified underground facility. While the United States controls the Strait of Hormuz, Trump is placing a clear red line before Iran's Revolutionary Guards. They learned from Russia. Iran's tactics against the United States are working. An investigation in the United States shows that Iran is becoming more sophisticated in its attack system in a manipulative way. The attacks may be Iranian, but the fingerprint is Russian, and the character is Chinese. The Middle East is beyond the breaking point. Will the naval blockade bring Tehran to complete collapse? And what will happen to the negotiations over the Strait of Hormuz when the United States and Iran present new conditions? Trump confirms for the first time, they changed my plane in Turkey because of a threat. I do not trust Iran, end quote. And at the same time, Saudi Arabia is blocking Egypt's entry into the Mecca agreements. I'm Yair Pinto, joined by Mati Shoshani, and we're here on Boots on the Ground. We bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel and about the war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran. Today is August 12th, so let's begin. A breathtaking maritime drama unfolded in the heart of the Gulf of Oman when an American AH-64 Apache attack helicopter fired missiles at the engine room of the tanker Vela Nova. The incident, which endangered the lives of bystanders in the area, was documented in a rare footage by the Iranian fishermen who found themselves inside the fire zone. According to the statement from the United States Central Command, the tanker flying the flag of Panama was identified while attempting to violate the blockade that is imposed on Iranian ports. After it ignored a series of warnings to stop, the decision was made to use focused military force in order to disable its movement. The Apache helicopter fired precision missiles at the engine room, disabling the large vessel. United States Central Command said that the vessel ignored repeated warnings to stop, and as a result, an American helicopter fired missiles into the ship's engine room and disabled it. The CENTCOM statement did not say whether there were casualties amongst the ship's crew. CENTCOM has said that so far, 55 commercial ships that tried to break the blockade have been diverted from their routes. 3 ships that did not follow orders were disabled, and naval forces boarded 2 additional vessels. More than 15 United States Navy warships are currently deployed in the waters of the Arabian Sea, including 2 aircraft carriers and an amphibious assault ship. Speaking with reporters at the Andrews Air Force Base near Washington, President Trump declared that the United States forces control the Strait of Hormuz and this vital waterway. The statement sends a direct deterrent message to the Iranian regime against the backdrop of ongoing tensions in the Middle East. Trump emphasized that America's control of Hormuz is an absolute reality and that no other country can interfere. He warned that if Iran takes any step to change the current status quo, U.S. forces will respond immediately and suppress the threat. I do not trust Iran, Trump began, adding that the Iranians lied to me endlessly. Referring to Iran's refusal to open the Strait of Hormuz for free passage, the President of the United States said, the United States military controls the area, not the Iranians. In the briefing with reporters, Trump also addressed threats against his life and the possibility that Iran might attack the United States on its own soil. At some point, maybe Iran will do something, and it will be bombed to hell if they do that. Alongside Trump's remarks, the chairman of the National Security and Foreign Policy Committee in the Iranian parliament, Ibrahim Aziz, is continuing to align with the threats coming from Tehran. In a post published on X on the morning of August 12th, Mohsen Rezaei issued his first statement regarding the Strait of Hormuz after taking office as Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. Rezaei wrote, Iran's message is clear. The Strait of Hormuz will not reopen until the United States ends the war and the blockade, releases Iran's frozen assets, and agrees to a ceasefire across the region, including in Lebanon and in Gaza. The new Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council emphasized, until all these conditions are met, the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed. Inside Iran, a new bill regarding the Strait of Hormuz is being advanced. According to the proposal, military and commercial ships belonging to countries defined by Tehran as hostile will not be allowed to enter the Arabian Gulf without Iranian approval. As a reminder, yesterday the Iranians emphasized that the strait will open only after the complete surrender of the United States, the withdrawal of American military forces from the region, and the end of the naval blockade on the Iranian ports. The latest Iranian attacks, which claimed the lives of 3 American soldiers in Jordan last month, reveal a troubling trend for the United States military. While America's interceptor stocks are shrinking rapidly, Iran's combat capabilities and tactics are becoming more advanced. The investigation indicates that Iran has become a more sophisticated adversary throughout the confrontation, drawing direct inspiration from tactics that Russia used in the war in Ukraine and others. The new Iranian strategy combined simultaneous fire of cruise missiles and ballistic missiles designed to occupy and exhaust the defensive systems, followed by a launch of drone swarms. This tactic was expressed during 5 intense days of fighting last June, during which Iran launched waves of drones and missiles at 3 American bases in Jordan in an effort to break through the defensive array. On the 5th day, July 17th, an Iranian missile managed to penetrate the layers of defense and hit the soldiers and their living quarters. It was a deadly strike that killed 3 soldiers and wounded more than 100. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio referred to the incident and admitted, "We intercepted almost all of the missiles, but one managed to get through." Alongside the regional pressure, Iran is using the time to fortify itself further. International inspectors assess that key components of Iran's nuclear program have been moved to a fortified underground facility about 100 meters deep into the center of the country. An expert quoted in the investigation illustrated the growing difficulty of dealing with the threat. Where are they? It's not as if they are sitting somewhere that you can simply bomb them. The United States continues to state that its position is clear. Iran will not have nuclear weapons. And in the regional arena, Egypt does not intend to join the Mecca Agreement anytime soon. Cairo wants to preserve neutrality. Against the backdrop of the signing of the Islamic Defensive Agreement, sources close to the Saudi Crown Prince revealed deep tension with Cairo. According to them, Egypt is no longer seen as a reliable strategic partner because of poor military performance, subordination to the United Arab Emirates, and lack of loyalty to Prince Mohammed bin Salman. We will bring you all the details. And today, we will also get into Hezbollah's war for survival. Hezbollah emerged battered, wounded, and defeated from its decision to assist Hamas. But its entry into the current campaign came from a strategic worldview that sees the existence of the Islamic Republic in Iran as a strategic anchor for the Shiite community all over the world. From Hezbollah's perspective, this is an existential campaign, and right now, that's especially clear deep inside southern Lebanon. The IDF has controlled the Ali Taher ridge in southern Lebanon for several months now. This is a strategic area under which Hezbollah's strategic tunnels are located. Inside those tunnels, dozens of terrorists have been trapped since the IDF took control of the area. And in recent days, the IDF has been increasing the pressure on the terrorists in these tunnels. Yesterday, the water supply lines were cut. And we will bring you all the details about the siege that the IDF is conducting against dozens of Hezbollah terrorists stuck in tunnels in southern Lebanon. And while anti-Semitism in the New York area is only increasing, a group of rabbis from New York recently met with Mayor Zohran Mamdani and confronted him with serious accusations. If you stay with us until the end, Ashlea Alex we'll bring you the story of how the New York mayor's campaign of hatred against Jews is crushing into reality. Over the past week, New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani's streak of good luck has begun to meet the reality. Mamdani is getting into trouble over his wife's trips to Syria and Lebanon, and has issued an unusual request for the city's police to escort his wife into a war zone. We will bring you all the details that we have on this topic. So, there's a lot ahead of us. Let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, joined by Ashlea, and we're boots on the ground. We bring you the full truth about what's happening in Israel and about this war against the Revolutionary Guards in Iran, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. But before we begin, I want to call on you to keep spreading the truth. Share our content with as many people as possible. Click on the subscribe button, and most importantly, do not forget to find me, Yair Pinto, and also Mati Shoshani on our social media account to get our first-hand perspective of what it's like to live in Israel in this war. If you love TBN Israel and want to be part of what God is doing in this land, we have something very special for you. I call on you to visit our official online store at shop.tbnisrael.com. Again, that's shop.tbnisrael.com, where you can find high-quality TBN Israel merchandise, items that help you stay connected, share the message, and support our mission of bringing truth, hope, and faith straight from Israel to the world. So every purchase helps us create more content, have more resources to research the situation and share the truth. Plus, it's pretty cool shirts. I like these black boots on the ground. These are my favorite shirts, but there's also cups. There's also different designs. There's also hats and other merchandise, as you can see next to me with Mati and myself modeling what we have. That was a long time ago, by the way. So again, shop.tbnisrael.com. And that's a great way to stay connected and help us share the truth. Shop.tbnisrael.com. Be part of the mission. Now let's get back to the news, because a ballistic missile attack has just turned the Bab el-Mandab into a deadly battlefield again. Iranian-backed Houthi forces struck a vessel moving through the narrow waterways, killing 6 people in the latest fighting. 4 crew members and 2 fighters aligned with Yemen's internationally recognized government. This is happening hundreds of miles from the Strait of Hormuz, but it belongs to the same regional confrontation. So the immediate question is this: is Tehran and Tehran's pressure and its strategy now stretching deliberately from one maritime choke point to another? From Israel, the military trap is becoming easier to read. Iran does not need to defeat the United States Navy in conventional warfare. Its forces and proxies need to make commercial movements more dangerous, more expensive, and unpredictable. Around Hormuz, that means coastal missiles, armed drones, fast boats, mines, and pressure on commercial vessels. Around Bab el-Mandab, the Houthis can use ballistic missiles and drones from Yemen to threaten traffic moving between the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Washington is answering with a very different kind of pressure. More than 15 American warships are now operating across waters around the Arabian Sea and the Gulf, and the blockade on the Iranian ports is being enforced with direct military action when ships refuse their orders. The strike on the Vela Nova, which we covered earlier, is important because it shows the method: repeated warnings first, then precision fire designed to disable the vessel rather than sink it. That creates a dangerous operation environment. A helicopter or an aircraft can stop one ship. It cannot remove every mobile mission, every missile on every drone team, every fast boat or unmanned surface craft along hundreds of miles of coastlines. The United States, therefore, has to maintain surveillance, air cover, maritime patrol, and also rapid response forces every day that the blockade continues. Iran is now trying to turn that military contest into a legal and political claim. Ibrahim Aziz, the chairman of the National Security and the Foreign Policy Committee in Iran's parliament, says that Tehran is advancing legislation that would require military and commercial vessels belonging to countries that Iran defines as hostile to obtain Iranian authorization before entering the Gulf. Basically, receive permission to go into the Persian Gulf to do anything. The purpose framework will give Iran's armed forces a central role in deciding who's allowed through. What is a serious development because Tehran is no longer presenting Hormuz only as the battlefield. It is trying to build a permanent system around the claim that Iran has the authority to decide which ships may move through one of the most important waterways on Earth. President Trump says the opposite. He says that the United States controls the Strait of Hormuz. Iran says that the strait will remain closed until Washington changes its behavior. And the reality on the water is more complicated than idle slogan. American forces can enforce a blockade on Iranian ports and protect selected shippings, while Iran still retains enough military capability to threaten commercial traffic and raise the cost of every transit. Now, move north with me to Lebanon, because the same contest between military pressure and political restraint is visible at the Ali Taher Ridge, where dozens of Hezbollah operatives remain inside a major underground complex beneath the ridge, an area that the IDF has described as strategically connected to Hezbollah's Bandar Regional Command. Israeli forces control the approaches and continue to watch the tunnel exits, while reports indicate that water lines serving the underground infrastructure have been cut as part of the effort to isolate the fighters below. Hezbollah has tried to move supplies towards the area with drones, and we have already seen how dangerous that can become. In late July, an explosive Hezbollah drone struck an unmanned Israeli engineering vehicle in the Ali Taher area, where there were no Israeli casualties, but the attack showed that the organization can still reach Israeli positions even while men are underground and under pressure. So the IDF's advantage on the ridge is not that every tunnel has already been captured. It is that the surface can be observed, access routes can be controlled, attempted movements can be stuck and struck, and any fighter who emerges can be exposed to Israeli fire. That allows Israel to apply pressure without immediately turning the entire underground system into a closed-range tunnel battle. And politics is shaping the pace. Israel is not ready to expand the pilot arrangement in southern Lebanon because simply the Lebanese army has entered several villages. It's not enough. Jerusalem wants Hezbollah weapons, infrastructure, and freedom of movement removed in the areas that are already transferred before additional Israeli withdrawals are discussed. This is the military test behind the diplomacy. Can the Lebanese state actually replace Hezbollah in places that matter most, or only the places where Hezbollah is willing to step aside? And before we continue, help us share the truth. Let me know what you think about this situation. Leave me a comment in the comment section and hit the like button also. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. By the way, check if you are subscribed or not. Many of you are watching and not subscribed, so please check it out. It will help us tremendously. If you want to get even more connected, be part of the TBN Israel family. I call on all of you to go to tbn.org/journeys/boots, tbn.org/journeys/boots, and you can also text the word boots to 316-316 and receive direct updates. If you're, of course, in North America, that's 316-316. Text the word boots and you receive direct updates from the ground before anybody else. We're creating a community of boots on the ground, and we want you to be part of it to help us share the truth of what God is doing in the land of Israel. And now I want to bring in Ashlea, because the military is trying to control the sea lanes and contain Hezbollah on the ground. But the next decision is political. It's in Washington, in Tehran, and also across the Arab world. So, Ashlea, over to you.
Yair, the political front begins with a contradiction that is now impossible to hide. President Trump says the United States has complete control of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's leadership says the strait will not reopen until the United States ends the war and the blockade, releases frozen Iranian assets, and accepts wider regional conditions. Those positions are not simply different descriptions of the same situation. They are competing claims of authority. Trump's language has hardened again. He says he does not trust Iran because Tehran has repeatedly lied to him, and he has warned that if Iran takes another major action against the United States, the response could be devastating. The threat against Trump himself also remains part of this calculation. The president has now publicly confirmed that the Secret Service and the military ordered him onto a different aircraft in Turkey because of a security threat. We already brought you the details of that deception operation earlier, so I'll not repeat them here. But the political meaning is important. Even while Trump talks about negotiation, his own security team treats the Iranian threat as credible enough to alter presidential movement. Washington is therefore trying to do two things at the same time. It wants to keep enough military power in the region to make another strike believable, while using the blockade and the economy to push Tehran toward a deal without immediately opening another major air campaign. Iran is trying to bundle several files together. Mohsen Rezaei, the new secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council and a former commander of the Revolutionary Guards, says Hormuz will not fully reopen until the United States ends military operations and the naval blockade, releases frozen Iranian assets, and accepts a broader ceasefire that includes Lebanon and Gaza. Iran also wants compensation for war damage. Trump answered by creating his own compensation demand. He says Iran should pay for Americans killed or seriously wounded in attacks linked to Tehran and its proxies. And he has expanded that argument to deaths and destruction in Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and Gaza. This is why the negotiations have become harder, even though both sides say they want a way out. The argument is no longer only about ships passing through Hormuz. It now touches sanctions, frozen money, responsibility for years of proxy warfare, Lebanon, Gaza, the future American military presence, and eventually the nuclear program. And time is becoming a weapon in those negotiations. The economic pressure inside Iran is severe. One of the most revealing warnings is coming from inside Iran's own business community. Majid Reza Hariri, who leads the Iran-China Chamber of Commerce, says the cost of moving a container from China to Iran has risen from roughly $3,000 by sea to around $12,000 through alternative routes created by the blockade. His calculation is simple. If the extra cost is about $9,000 per container, and Iran normally handles roughly 2 million containers a year through its southern ports, the additional logistics burden approaches $18 billion annually. It's an internal Iranian estimate, but it shows the mechanism. The blockade can raise the price of imported components and basic goods long before they reach a warehouse. The inflation picture also needs precision. Trump has used numbers as high as 300% when describing Iran's inflation. Independent projections are much lower than that, but still extreme. The International Monetary Fund has projected average consumer price inflation around 69% for 2026, alongside a sharp economic contraction. For ordinary Iranians, prices are rising faster than salaries, while fuel shortages and wartime costs add pressure. Now, at the global market, oil prices are again pressing toward $90 a barrel as traders watch Hormuz and the renewed Houthi attacks around the Red Sea. That matters to Trump because the war is no longer only a foreign policy issue. Higher oil feeds into transportation costs, gasoline prices, and inflation inside the United States. So Washington's economic strategy has a built-in deadline. The blockade hurts Iran, but prolonged disruption can also hurt American consumers. Both sides are trying to convince the other that they can absorb the pain longer. And while Washington and Tehran argue over who controls the Gulf, 3 other countries have built a new defense structure of their own. On August 7th, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan signed the Mecca Joint Defense Agreement. The core principle is deliberately strong. An attack on one member is to be treated as an attack on all. The 3 governments insist the agreement is defensive and is not directed against any specific country. That's an important distinction. We should not automatically describe it as an anti-Iran alliance or an anti-Israel alliance. The capabilities are significant. Saudi money and geography, Turkey's NATO-scale military and defense industry, and Pakistan's large armed forces and nuclear arsenal. The agreement still does not define whether collective defense means intelligence, air defense deployments, logistics, or direct combat. Those details will determine whether the pact becomes operational or remains mainly political. And there is already a dispute over who belongs inside it. A report based on people close to Saudi decision-making says Riyadh blocked Egypt from joining the pact for now, despite Turkish efforts to bring Cairo in. The Saudi complaints described in that report are unusually blunt. Officials are said to be frustrated that Egypt provided only limited support during the war in Yemen, did not align strongly enough with Riyadh against Iran, and has increasingly followed the United Arab Emirates on several regional questions where Abu Dhabi and Riyadh do not see eye to eye. There is also criticism of Egypt's military effectiveness and of a defense industry that, in the Saudi view, has spent too much energy on civilian economic projects, while Turkey and Pakistan offer technologies and readiness that can be used directly in a regional security structure. None of that means Egypt is permanently outside. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has called Egypt a natural partner and has left the door open for future membership if the political and technical issues are resolved. But Egypt's absence matters because it exposes something deeper than a disagreement over paperwork. The Arab world is building new coalitions while carrying old mistrust. Cairo has historically been one of the central military and political powers in the Arab system. If a major Sunni defense framework can be created without Egypt, then the balance of influence is shifting toward Riyadh, Ankara, and Islamabad. For Israel, the correct response is neither panic nor complacency. The pact was created in the middle of a regional war and is being presented as defensive. Israel has no factual basis to claim that the agreement is designed for a future war against the Jewish state. At the same time, Jerusalem will study the command mechanisms, intelligence cooperation, weapon transfers, and joint exercises very carefully. Alliances are judged by what they can do, not only by what leaders say at the signing ceremony. And now we move from Middle Eastern alliances to American city politics, because the argument over Israel is creating another political test in New York. Mayor Zohran Mamdani entered office with enormous momentum. He passed a new tax aimed at luxury second homes, backed progressive candidates, and built a national profile around the idea that New York could become a laboratory for a much more aggressive economic agenda. Now the easy part is over. A judge has temporarily frozen the rollout of the new luxury second home tax after a legal challenge focused on how the city implemented it. The administration published a very broad list of properties that could potentially be affected and sent notices to thousands of owners, triggering criticism that the process moved faster than the verification. City Hall is appealing, but the damage is political as well as legal. Trump has already attacked the policy as a dangerous political experiment, and his administration is examining whether there are federal legal tools that could be used against it. Mamdani is also facing friction inside his own coalition. City council members are complaining about the review process for senior appointments, while business leaders are angry over removals from a mayoral advisory body. Transportation officials have also pushed back on the politics of free buses. Mamdani's office answers that criticism with a very different picture. His administration says it has reduced regulation on small businesses, repaired more than 170,000 potholes, balanced the city budget despite inheriting a roughly $12 billion gap, and overseen historically low levels of violent crime and homicide. The larger test is whether a movement politician can translate campaign promises into legal procedure, budgets, appointments, and durable relationships with city institutions. The most sensitive relationship, especially for our audience, is with New York's Jewish community. A group of 10 rabbis recently met with Mamdani at City Hall for about an hour in a discussion organized through the mayor's office focused on combating antisemitism. The rabbis did not speak with one voice. Some urged Mamdani to change the tone of his attacks on Israel because they believe his rhetoric contributes to an atmosphere in which Jewish New Yorkers feel more vulnerable. Others did not ask him to stop criticizing Israel, but wanted him to do it with greater care, while condemning Hamas consistently and making clear that American Jews are not responsible for every decision made by the Israeli government. That distinction matters. New York has the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, and political language about the Middle East does not remain abstract when it's spoken by the mayor of the city. The relationship deteriorated further after Mamdani released a video acknowledging that he does not have the legal authority as mayor to arrest Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, while still calling Netanyahu a war criminal and urging federal authorities to act. Several Jewish leaders saw that as proof that the mayor was continuing to inject the Israel conflict into local political life. Mamdani's office says he remains committed to fighting antisemitism and described the recent meeting with rabbis as open and constructive. That leaves him with a difficult political test. He has to show that he can protect Jewish New Yorkers and lower communal tension without pretending that his long-standing views on Israel have disappeared. At the same time, his critics have decided whether engagement with City Hall can produce change or whether confrontation is the only language they believe the administration will understand. And that brings the story back to the Middle East. In Washington, Riyadh, Tehran, and New York leaders are discovering the same thing. Rhetoric is easy when the consequences are distant. Once ships are hit, alliances are signed, prices rise, communities feel threatened, and courts intervene, every political position begins to carry a real cost. Yair, back to you.
Thank you very much, Ashlea. Ladies and gentlemen, what do you think about Ashlea Alex? Please let me know in the comments. I'm curious to see, and she will be very happy to hear that you appreciate her reports. Because the military pressure is expanding at sea. Iran is trying to turn that pressure into political control, and the regional alliances that is forming around it are still untested under fire. The next real test is whether one more strike on a ship, one failed negotiation, or one move in Lebanon is enough to push this confrontation back into a full-scale war. Let me know what you think will happen, and keep spreading the truth. Follow us. If you want some boots-on-the-ground merchandise, that's a great way to help us. Go to shop.tbnisrael.com, and the best thing that you can do is pray. So I'm calling on you to pray for the situation, pray for wisdom to the leaders that are dealing with these terrorist organizations and negotiating. Pray for the United States military in this region, the Navy of the United States. Pray for the Iranian people to have better leadership, to have a future, and keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.